I don't frighten easily, but Nigel Benn once scared me shitless during a training jaunt in the Canary Islands. Not many people know this, but as well as being a world-class boxer, Nigel was also an ace car driver. Good enough in fact to have succeeded at rally or even Grand Prix driving. Me and Tony had flown to Tenerife with him as mates as well as minders, as he got into some serious training for one of his big title fights. The object was to get a bit of altitude work into him, and we all piled into a BMW 320i and set off at the main mountain on the island, 7,000 feet high Mount Tady. We're all chatting away, enjoying the experience, admiring the views as we climbed higher and higher until we were among low cloud. Then suddenly, wham! Nigel had spun the car full circle on a handbrake turn on the side of the mountain with a 500-foot drop only feet away. I remember both me and Tony going, "Ah!" as we thought we were goners. We stopped in a screech of brakes and a cloud of dust. Nigel was laughing his head off. It was his idea of a joke, but we'd all thought the Dark Destroyer was about to destroy us. I said, "You wanker, Nigel!" We looked over the side of the mountain road and it was a big drop. I had visions of the newspaper headlines back home saying, "Boxing champ dies in mysterious mountain plunge." The next time we went up from the training camp, we had Ray, one of Nigel's sparring partners, with us. Me and Tony half knew what to expect. We were gripping tight as we wound up the mountain road. Up, up, up. I thought, "You're not going to do it, are you?" We're about as high as you can get before the road runs out. Then the smirk came over Nigel's face. Wallop! He spun the motor 360 degrees again. Me and Tony both looked at Ray. His mouth was open and his eyes were popping out of his head. "What the fuck?" he shouted. Another knockout laugh to Nigel. But I suppose it wouldn't have pleased his promoter, agent or insurance company to know that Britain's favourite fighter was dicing with death upon a Spanish mountain. How would that have looked if we'd have had a crash and ended up dead or badly injured? Someone saying it was just his party trick done for a laugh would sound a bit of a sorry explanation. But that was Nigel, as fearless behind the wheel of a car as he was in the ring. I don't know when he decided it would be a laugh to spin a beamer halfway up a mountain, but he wasn't a fool and must have felt confident that he had everything under control. I did worry though that one day he would overcook it with one of his stunts and end up badly hurt in a wrecked motor. They were good days with Nigel. I had the greatest respect for him as a fighter and as a human being, and we remained good friends through thick and thin. And we did have some traumas. We regularly flew out to the Tenerife training camp with him and went through the motions of top-level high-pressure workouts with him. I say through the motions because it's only when you try it that you realise what a tough regime these guys set themselves. They make it look so easy. Then they are superbly fit specimens of manlyhood. Me and Tony were big, muscly bodybuilders who could hold our own any day of the week in a nightclub ruckus. But we couldn't hold a light to Nigel when it come to stamina, speed and supreme fitness. He once invited me to try a workout session on the pads in the gym. I'd seen Nigel do it and Tony do it. So I got gloved up and set about knocking 7 bows out of the pads. No warm-up, just straight in, whack, whack, whack. But I was too big, too muscle-bound, and within a few minutes, a searing pain went through the ligaments in my shoulder. I'd ripped a ligament just under my arm. It hurt like fuck. It taught me a valuable lesson. Being fit and being muscle-bound are two very different things. I tried running with Nigel at high altitude on the mountains. I knew my left leg wasn't strong after the car accident, so I volunteered to do a downhill session of about a mile with Nigel while Tony drove the car. When we stopped, I was shot away. My whole 17-stone body was shaking in convulsions. I had difficulty breathing. My muscles were a burden, not a help. "Oh yeah, that was great, Nigel," I gasped. After that, it was strictly the gym for me. Weights and bars. Fuck those hills. Nigel always paid for the villa in Tenerife, and we bought our own plane tickets. We were pleased and proud to be there. If he needed us, we were never far away. Nigel kept himself to himself most of the time while we were in the training mode, but occasionally went out and found himself being mobbed by fans. He was a top international sporting figure and recognised the world over. We were always there to ensure no one got too enthusiastic. He liked to relax playing records, as a guest DJ at Bobby's Bar on the holiday island. It was cool. The faces of unsuspecting holidaymakers when they walked through the door and saw a hotshot boxer Nigel at the turntable was a picture. I remember one visitor from Manchester going up to him and saying, "Hey, you don't have to look like Nigel Benn." Nigel smiled and said, "No mate, just a look-alike." A lot would have said, "I am Nigel Benn," and revelled in the adulation. But not Nigel. He liked the quiet life. They were good times away from the tensions of London and Essex. Tony's death hit Nigel badly. Though he was unaware of Tony's criminal activities, he could see a ton of bad publicity heading his way as newspapers and TV explored the relationship between top boxer and murdered drug dealer. He was shocked by the information coming out about the criminal activities of Tony and the other boys. He could hardly believe that this was the same Tony Tucker he knew and liked. He had planned to have Tony's name emblazoned across his boxer shorts for all to see in the next fight as a public token of their friendship. He was advised, don't. His management could see that even in the tough world of professional boxing, to have links with a major drug dealer, a man who had walked you out through the crowds at all your top fights, was certain to bring much unwelcome publicity. Tony's death was principally being linked to the death of policeman's daughter Leah Betts, and with Raquel's nightclub in Basildon, where she got the ecstasy tablet that had killed her, and which was under the control of Tony and his firm. To have been seen supporting Tony Tucker would have been professional suicide for Nigel in that current climate. It was time for the muscle to back off from the boxing champ. Nigel experienced his first major defeat at the hands of Sugar Ray Malinga in Newcastle on the very first occasion he walked out to the ring without Tony and me beside him in March 1996. He'd phoned me a few days earlier and said, "You will be there to walk me out, won't you?" I said I would, but I had reservations both for Nigel and me. "I really want you there," he said. "I'll call you to confirm." It was my birthday on the night of the fight. I thought I can cancel my party and Nigel is more important. We were still good friends despite all that was going on in connection with the murders, and I thought I should be there. I sat and waited by the phone. I never heard another word. I was hurt by it. I thought I'd been ditched at the last minute because of the fear of more bad publicity. I sat and watched the fight at home, and for the first time ever, I wanted Nigel to get beaten. He did. And afterwards, I discovered that the silence was nothing to do with Nigel. He said his management had asked the security to do it, but she had forgotten. I was back at his side, walking him ringside for the next two fights against Steve Collins. He lost them both, and the glory days were over. But we'd had some really good times along the way. I'd made many fond memories of the excitement, the buzz of a big fight night as we walked Nigel out and the crowds partied to let him through. His minders at his side, millions watching on TV. I remember being ringside with Nigel at Wembley on the night Frank Bruno won that great fight against Oliver McCall. We were all ecstatic. Nigel was one of the first to climb into the ring to hug him and congratulate him. Great scenes. We got back to the dressing room and Nigel discovered that he'd lost one of his handmade gold and diamond Cartier ear studs in excitement. He said, "It's got to be in the ring. Quick, Carl, go and look for it." Look for it. It was bedlam out there. Jubilant Bruno fans were thronging through the arena, thousands and thousands of them. Nevertheless, because Nigel was worried about his poxy gold earring, me and Tony started clambering our way back towards the ring. Talk about swimming against the tide. We were climbing over people, under people, over seats, over barriers, and finally made it into the square. Amazingly, we spotted the glistering diamond among all the feet, undamaged, and I was down on my hands and knees to scoop it up. Then we had to repeat the operation, battling through the crowds yet again to return the earring to Nigel. He took one look and said, "Thanks, Carl. I never thought I'd see that again." I loved the fight game, and to be as close to the action as I was with Nigel was a fantastic thrill. I loved all the razzmatazz of walking him out through the dressing room, through the cheering crowds, hearing the music blasting out, feeling so proud when he won that I had big tears in my eyes. I stood with him when he peed blood after some of his toughest battles caused by extensive punishment to the kidneys. After a fight, if he was okay, we'd usually get changed and showered and head off to a club somewhere. It was amazing how Nigel could stand up to some of the fiercest battling in the ring, then within a couple of hours be ready to go out partying. He knew a lot of people in the nightclub business, We'd often have a club to ourselves, courtesy of the management. He was an idol in clubland. We'd drink and dance and Nigel would DJ his way through the night, sometimes till 6 or 7 in the morning. It was his favourite way of unwinding. He was good too, and he'd always managed to find some great funk and soul tracks to keep the punters happy. It was amazing really. 1 minute trading punches in the ring with some of the toughest geezers in the world, next minute chilling out over a turntable in a nightclub. He was professional enough to be able to choose a whole different style of music for different clubs in different parts of the country. Up north, more traditional stuff. London, more funky, up-to-date stuff. A lot of good black singers. He even talked once of turning pro on the DJ scene when he retired from boxing. We were going to get a roadshow together and go on tour around the UK. Or even abroad if we could get the bookings. He really fancied that lifestyle, but he had to knock that idea on the head when his twin babies came along. It wouldn't have been fair to Caroline. Nigel decided to honour a promise he'd made to do a DJ gig at Raquel's, despite a wave of bad publicity of the drug dealing and Leah Betts' death. He turned up, very few punters did. It proved to be the last waltz for Raquel's. The club shut down forever the following Friday. Then Nigel got involved in a spot of bother with his former best mate, Ray Sullivan, which put him in court and dramatically changed his life forever. It happened while the two of them were up at Legends Club in the West End. I was working elsewhere at the time, so I never knew exactly what happened. I had a call from Nigel saying this and that had gone off. There'd been a fight, but he wasn't bothered about interrupting his training schedule for the Steve Collins' rematch and wanted me to go to Tenerife with him as usual. Although the police in London were investigating the incident at Legends, I thought some sort of deal was done, whereby he wasn't charged right away to enable him to carry on training for the next 6 weeks. He was a big name fighter, big box office, huge Sky TV rights, $1 million man. The cops apparently had talks with Nigel's management team and agreed to let the fight go ahead because there was so much tied up in it. It was another sellout fight at Manchester Arena, and once again Nigel had them packed in. 8,500 punters. The public fucking loved him. I was a bit disappointed that Nigel hadn't phoned me when he went out to Legends and got into the bus stop. The whole business probably wouldn't have happened. Caroline had said to him to ring me. She told him, "Get Carlton to make sure you are alright." She always felt he was safe when he was with me, and he was. I always watched his back. I protected him. Because he was such a high-profile character, he always attracted attention wherever he went, and not always the right sort of attention. There were girls who wanted to get hold of him to get him into bed, then sell the story to the News of the World or some other tabloid. Then there were blokes who wanted to pick fights with him to prove how hard they were. He was there for the taking, an upfront, high-profile, high-publicity value multimillionaire, and a nice guy to boot. And he needed protection. I used to warn him how dangerous some of the gold-digging girls could be, however tempted he might be. However pretty the woman, I always said, don't even think about it, Nige. I really hate those slappers who sleep with someone famous and then go run into the newspapers. They are the lowest of the low, cheap slags. Everybody thought I was his minder, his bodyguard, but I wasn't. I was his friend. Okay, I just happened to be a minder and a bodyguard, but I was at Nigel's side because I liked him and cared about him. I think I can honestly say we were soulmates. Walking a top boxer out to a big televised fight, like Eubank or Collins, might seem glamorous, and I did enjoy it, but we were there to do a serious job. You never knew when a nutter might push out the crowd, out of the sea of bodies, and have a go. Or even well-wishers going to give him a friendly pat might accidentally catch his eye with a finger or a ring, and you've got a multi-million-pound match off because your fighter has accidentally injured an eye. Protection came in many ways. So the bombshell dropped when Nigel was eventually nicked for attacking Ray Sullivan. No one seemed to know what was behind it all. Nigel just wasn't a violent man away from the boxing ring. Apparently, it's all to do with something that had happened years earlier when Nigel was with Sharon and Ray Sullivan was with her sister. Nigel and Sharon's relationship was volatile, explosive. Ray was Nigel's best mate, like a brother. We used to be with them at boxing matches and saw there was something special about their relationship. They're inseparable. Nigel thought more of Ray than he did of his own brothers. Ray went with him to a training camp in Los Angeles to prepare for a big fight, before I'd ever started walking with him out with Tony on fight nights. Later, he found out that his best mate, the man he trusted more than anyone in the world, had made a pass at his girlfriend and expressed his undying love. I think it must have been Sharon who told him, maybe out of spite during another one of their blazing rows. Not surprisingly, Nigel got the hump. Ray, a bit of a playboy and lady killer, hadn't denied it, so there was a big falling out. Nigel was badly affected mentally. He felt like he'd been betrayed, and it started to affect his fighting abilities. To this day, it still eats him up. It exploded that night at Legends. There was a fight. Ray got a really good hiding. That might have been the end of it, except that Ray decided to go public and had his photos splattered all over the Sun with a big story saying how Nigel had beaten him up. The hospital photo showed Ray's tubes and clips and medical apparatus all pulled out on display to make it look worse than it was. He said he was going to take out a civil war action against Nigel for damages. Then a lot of people started to turn their backs on Nigel. Ray was quite well liked around the club scene, and a lot of people had it in for Nigel and were slagging him off big time behind his back. They thought he was just a bully boy boxer who smacked Ray for no reason. Then Nigel was charged with causing GBH and was awaiting trial in court. Nigel was feeling the pressure and he came to me and said, "Carlton, I need help." I was going out with him to clubs and seeing people just turn their backs. They said to me, "Why are you sticking with him? He's just a thug." I told them it wasn't for me to say. I was a friend and friends stick by each other. I suggested to Nigel that he went public like Ray had and gave his side of the story. Then people might understand, but he wouldn't. With the court hearing pending, it was probably the right decision. They might have considered it contempt of court. So Nigel wanted help. I said I would explain the situation to people if Nigel didn't want to talk about it. Gradually they were saying, "Oh yes, we can see why it happened." Nevertheless, I stayed close by his side. There was still danger out there for the Dark Destroyer. The trial started at Middlesex Guildhall Crown Court in May 1997 in a blaze of publicity. The prosecution claimed that Nigel had smashed a glass ashtray in Ray's face in a savage and unprovoked attack. Nigel and Sharon's love life came under scrutiny as the motive for the assault, which led to Ray having 105 stitches in his face and nose. She said, "Nigel had loads of affairs, but I was always 100% faithful." Nigel said Ray, who worked as a ticket agent, had tried to frame him over the attack at Legends to try to get damages. The jury believed him, and he was cleared of all the serious charges that could have put him inside. The judge, though, did say he thought Nigel had brought the prosecution on himself and refused his £50,000 defence costs. Had to smile as the cheers went up for Nigel from supporters in the public gallery. The clouds had been lifted. Nigel walked out of court with me at his side and went down on his knees in front of his new love Caroline, who'd sat through every minute of the hearing listening to the distressing evidence about the man she adored and his previous relationship with Sharon, and he told her the verdict had been in the Lord's hands. Nigel had found religion and had become a born-again Christian. But Nigel had other enemies apart from Ray, and there was talk of an attack. I stayed close to him. I was protecting him even though he didn't know I was protecting him. He'd got everything to lose. I'd got fuck all to lose. Then I got a phone call offering me 100,000 to turn my back on him. There was a hit out on him, said the caller, and they wanted me out of the way. There was a firm out there prepared to take out a contract to kill him, and they considered me the main obstacle. I said, "Bollocks, if you do him, best you do me first. You have to go through me to get to him." That was as far as I was concerned. No one was going near Nigel Benn. The caller, who reckoned he was acting as an intermediary and was not involved in the actual hit, said, "Oh, I didn't realise you felt so strongly." I think the vibes I put out told them I meant what I said. I've got a reputation for being hard, but fair, and a friend is a friend forever to me. Perhaps my refusal to be bought off may have even saved Nigel's life. By then, Ray had taken out a civil action against Nigel for £50,000 damages. It was always going to be a bitter and acrimonious fight. I stayed at a hotel with Nigel day and night for 2 weeks when the case came up. I was never more than a few yards away. I stayed close by in the same hotel. I had breakfast with him and Caroline. I travelled to court by taxi with them. I gave up 2 weeks of my life for Nigel. On top of that, I was busy behind the scenes. I helped Nigel as much as I could. I put myself right on offer really. Everybody knew who I was and where I stood with Nigel. I was with him every day. Every time he came out of court, I was photographed beside him on the steps. The media attention was constant. We were followed everywhere, chased down the streets by camera crews. The pressure became intense. But I never once considered giving up on him. After 2 weeks, the damage claims were thrown out. Life returned to some sort of normality, or as normal as life can be for a world-class middleweight boxer living in the full glare of publicity and is now very public-minder. We still managed to get away from the spotlight for a bit of touring and DJ work. Our trips took us to the north, to Scotland and all over England, with Nigel paying for the expenses and giving me money from what he was earning. We had some really good times now the storms had passed. Then came one of the greatest honours of my life. Nigel asked me to be one of his best men at his and Caroline's wedding blessing, along with his brother John and our friends Wayne and Simon. It was a great party, held at his luxury home in Beckenham, Kent, a couple of weeks after he and Caroline had secretly got married at a registry office. Everyone was in top hat and tails. There were loads of celebrity guests, a gospel choir, magazine photographers, and Caroline had a full-size boxing ring set up in the garden early that morning to have the blessing in. Everybody was expected to give a little speech, and we were all saying what a great bloke Nigel was. I had to be the silly one, of course. I stood up and started cursing the top hat I was being forced to wear like some poxy toff. Then I put my hand inside and pulled out a white rabbit and gave it to Caroline. It went down like a bomb. Then I told the guests I'd done a big speech for everyone, and you could see them groaning as I fumbled with a piece of paper. When I unfolded it, it was a plain bit of paper about 4 foot square with just the word speech written on it. Big yes, but short no. Everybody fell about laughing. I did a few jokes and it was a really good laugh. I did the security at the party for Nigel as well as being best man, but there was never likely to be any trouble. He was going to kick off at a party thrown by Nigel Benn with guests like Lennox Lewis and half the top muscle from London. No, it was a good day. One of my great memories of the highs and lows in the life of a great boxer and a good friend. One notable absentee was lovely Frank Bruno, who'd once been a mate of Nigel's but had remained friendly with Ray Sullivan, and for all the bad feelings still going on, was not on the guest list. It was a shame really. Everybody loved Frank. Me and Tony had met him a few times around the fight scene, and he was great value. When he knew Tony had been killed, he beckoned me over at a fight in Manchester and said, "I'm really sorry." You knew this was genuine and from the heart. We had a brief chat about Tony though. Of course, he knew nothing of Tony's criminal activities. Frank knew we were really good mates as well as a team, and he could see I was shattered by the news. He just called me over to the ringside seat while Nigel was warming up, strictly spontaneous. No one had asked him to, and for a man of his stature to take time to do that left a lasting impression of him as being a really decent human being. I went into Legends one night, way before the murders, and he was there with his wife having a meal. "Hello Frank." "Hello Carlton." I told him I was out celebrating my birthday, and he stood up and got me a drink and wished me well. Then we had a sort of a friendly wrestle. It was great. Carlton and a big grizzly bear. Nigel and I still talk occasionally, but that sort of magic of a special relationship has gone. I'm pleased he's found religion. I think he needed it in order to find himself. I wish him well. He can rest assured that the little secrets I know will remain safe with me, even in this book. He's a knockout bloke, if you pardon the pun.